My very first assignment was Cape Canaveral. I'm Dui Turner. I am a mom and a wife, and also for 25 years, I was a military service woman. Things for service women is complicated because every 2 or 3 years you're moving.
Right.
So, like emotional stability in terms of relationships are difficult. So for 25 years, I was a practitioner. As I retired, now I'm diving into academics, and I am in a doctoral program. The space appears to be limited. Appears that, well, if I am the first woman, I don't want to have a second one. I want to be that. And that doesn't work. That does not work. We really have to come together and collaborate, support, elevate one another, and go from big idea to action.
Hi everyone, my name is Galina Lipina, and I'm together today with Dui Turner. And today's episode, it's going to be about a creation of a different kind of dream, which I'm going to have to talk about that. But before we go to talk about the dreams, I want to talk about you. Tell us and the listeners a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Okay, thank you. And hello, everyone from Florida, where I live. So I'm Dui Turner. I am a mom and a wife. And also for 25 years, I was a military service woman. I just retired in January. And I joined with this dream of education, of doing things bigger than myself. Did not know how long I was going to stay, but ended up having a really long career. And now that I retired, I transitioned into consulting, into causes that directly relate to women, which is is very connected to what I used to do when I was in the military. In my last 3 years, I was the chief of a special program called Women, Peace and Security that comes from the United Nations, and the United States adopted it, and I was one of the first implementers. Yes, and just really happy to continue my call for, my professional call to support women. What better place than here where we're like, women support women. So
yeah. So you kind of jumped through like, oh yeah, I was just in the military for some years. Tell us about what prompted you to go to the military, because that's not a very typical thing women usually do.
Yes. So I was born in New York, but I was raised in Brazil. I came back at 19. I was 19 years old, and my dream was to be a National Geographic documentary producer.
Okay.
So I started going to school, and English is my second language, and it was difficult to go to college for production because cinema asked for a lot of humanity. So I had to read and write a lot. And I was still developing my English. So I had to take a deep breath and think, okay, what's next? What is the next best thing I can do? And that was astronomy, because I was an amateur astronomer.
National Geographic, astronomy, service.
So I started, switched my major to astronomy and was doing great. And I came across a book that talked about the space program, the United States space program, and that a lot of people who participated in the space program was in the military. And just happened that across my bus stop to go to school and work, there was a recruiting office. And one day, I looked at it for a long time, but one day I just crossed the street and went upstairs, and I asked if they had a job in science, and they had a job in weather, meteorology. And was, meteorology and astronomy is like looking up into the sky. And after talking to my dad and some close advisors, I decided to join. And it was the best thing because, believe it or not, how the universe aligns things. My very first assignment was Cape Canaveral. So I got to work with the space program as a very young airman that did not know much, with not a whole lot of experience, but that dream came to full fruition. I worked for the space program as my first assignment. So
Talking about the speed of manifesting.
I know. It's pretty fantastic. Yes.
And trusting your guidance too. It's like not being attached to how and just following where the energy leads you.
Yes.
And then arriving there.
Yes.
How was it like? How did it feel when you arrived in Cape Canaveral?
Oh, for me, it was the best. I enjoyed every moment of it. There was a senator when he went back to space. He was an astronaut and he went back to space, John Glenn, and I got to work that mission. So I was the weather technician. I had a really small role, but sort of I felt very important, which was to make sure that the current weather was good for the shuttle to take off. And I had to say, go, no go. And that was amazing. So very satisfying, adventure to be part of that, piece of history. So
that is amazing. Not so many people, let alone women, can talk about working in the space industry.
Yes.
As their first assignment.
Yes. That was awesome. That was wonderful. So yes, and that was the beginning of my military journey and how I joined.
That's incredible. And then, so you were in the military, following your dream, working with space, and then you also had a family.
That came much later. So I think one of the things for service women is complicated because every 2 or 3 years you're moving.
Right.
So, like emotional stability in terms of relationships are difficult. So, I have fallen in love many times and then you have to go your different ways and you sort of have the dream that you're going to stay together. But at the end of the day, life keeps happening. So I didn't get married until much, much later. My family didn't come. So I joined in 1997 and I didn't get married until 2012. And so, yes, but it did come to that point where I was able to find my soulmate, and we actually met at the Pentagon, walking around the Pentagon. Yes, the Pentagon is a really difficult place to work. And I always joke, I said, behind those solid walls, the best thing is falling in love. And I did fall in love at the Pentagon. And then we got married and, he was, before we met, he had been in the Army. That was awesome because it's a difficult lifestyle. And I think one of the difficulties that I was having is either you find someone that's within the military or someone who understands. Because when I had civilian boyfriends, it was difficult to explain the operational tempo, the demands, the sacrifice. And with him was really easy. So it worked, thank goodness. And then a few years later, we had our children, which we have twin boys. And yes, and then comes that thing of work-life balance. And I learned along the way that we don't necessarily, I think balance sounds so Cirque du Soleil, right? You have to balance all those things and oh my God, make sure you don't let anything fall. But a better approach for my family and I is life management and trust. So if I were working or if I were traveling, I just had to trust that at home everything was good. And when I was at home, I just had to trust that everything at work was good and not so much balancing, but managing.
So switching your focus on the present moment and trusting whatever is not in the present will take care of itself.
Yes. I think not that I'm, super A+ on this, but, I've learned a few things along the way and it have worked for us. Thank goodness.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. Because I, obviously in my network, there's a lot of entrepreneurs. So balancing, business and family or business, travel, health and family, it's challenging. And I can only imagine what it was like with the service in the military and family and kids and a husband. Yeah. What was the most fulfilling part of you for that time?
As a service woman and a mother and a wife?
Yes.
I think really at a personal level is being able to do it. That's fulfilling, to be able to somehow, with a lot of teamwork, to do it, but also to break some of those stereotypes that women, wives, mothers cannot serve. And I think that transcends the military. It goes into, the civilian industry, private sector. is, I think, to me right now, especially on what I do, as I look back, is fulfilling to know that I was able to do it and to be sort of an example, a humble example, right, to other women that yes, you can do it. You can do it with teamwork, with patience, with dropping a little bit of this idea that everything needs to be perfect, and yes, and manage instead of balancing. So I think what is fulfilling now is looking back and saying, okay, I did it, and hopefully other women feel inspired, or if they are going through a moment where they find it really difficult, that they can look up to someone like me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, we're going to skip that part. Tell us a little bit of your background. Where are you from? How did you grow up? We're going to jump through that part.
So I'm first generation American, barely, because I was born in New York. My parents are from Colombia. They met in New York. I was born in New York, and then when I was 2 years old, I moved to Brazil with my family because of my dad's job. So I am American, Colombian, Brazilian, and yes, and I came back when I was 19 years old to go to school, as I mentioned, to study, and end up, the big left flank to join the military, and so here I am.
It's amazing. What was it like? Because many women that come from diverse backgrounds, they either love it and they kind of like try to like prove to the world that they can be this, strong women, make it into the more masculine sectors of business professions and endeavors, and some manage to do it in the way that is balanced with their feminine and like enjoying the process and not fully just like putting their pants on. What was that like for you in the military, with all your backgrounds, all of the different countries, and being a woman? How was it? What was it like working there?
Yes, I think when I came back from Brazil to the United States, I had this big thirst. And what I saw and what I still see is a lot of opportunity. So I think when you have that mindset, all those things become more of distractions instead of the main focus. So as a woman, when I first joined, with a big accent, because now my accent still exists, but back then was even worse. And feeling, okay, maybe maybe this is too much of a mountain, too high of a mountain to climb. But I didn't really contemplate ever in the fact that I'm Latina, that I'm a woman. What I was doing was learning, serving, and getting busy with my work. To this day, that's how I see it. Like, I don't sometimes things do happen and you're like, but I don't really focus too much on it. And I think that's more of their problem than my problem. And keep moving forward. And that's what I tell younger women and women who are coping with difficulties at the workplace. Focus on what you have to do and keep moving. And, sometimes we do have to go face to face because there are things that are too much is our responsibility to go, But a lot of times it's more of a distraction, right? Yes. Microaggressions, comments unnecessary, moves that you're like, so it's their problem. And I have a mission to do. I have a family. I have a cause, and I just keep moving.
Beautiful.
Yes.
You know what I love about that perspective and your mindset is so many people find things in the environment as excuses or reason not to do something, or pouring all their energy into like fighting and resisting something. And you've done none of that. Like, you went with an intention to create something and be who you wanted to be and create the contribution that you wanted. And then that was your driving force.
But it does come with challenges too. So it was not all roses. And I give you like a quick example that I think is very relatable to women, is when I became pregnant. A pregnant woman in the military uniform is not the best combination, right? It's like, even when I was wearing, it's like, you're walking, bobbling side to side, you're brewing another, in my case, 2 lives. And there was a major crisis in the Caribbean, and I was the chief of the crisis action team, but I was pregnant in a high-risk pregnancy, so I couldn't be working that mission. And I had to ask for support. So I had to ask some of my peers to cover for me, quote unquote. And that created some negative feelings on some of my colleagues. And in fact, I had one that came to me and said, well, if every woman in the army wanted to be pregnant, what would be of the mission? And that got to me. That really got to me, coming to like who I am. Maybe this is the end of my career. I cannot be a mom and be a military service woman. And this was slowly, really, like I was internalizing this. But this is the beauty of the universe, is that sometimes we think it's on us, but sometimes they're just people who show up. And out of all people, there was actually a man, a boss, that when he wrote my evaluation, he wrote me as the number one of this team. And I was very surprised because I hadn't been delivering. Yes. So I went and I asked him, and then he said, no, we have to have vision. So that was a guy who had vision. He said, I know what your work was before. I know you're pregnant now, but you will continue contributing. So, this is how I rate. And to me, that guy saying that to me meant everything, because I was really deflated and I thought maybe this is the end. But no, I came back and now if I were to see that colleague, I would say, for your question, what would happen to the mission? I said, nothing would happen to the mission. In fact, it would be better, because now that I'm back, I give more, because it's not only about me and the mission, it's about the legacy I left for my children. So I'm stronger. I think those are things that
I got goosebumps when you were talking about that part. Like, it touches my heart when people just really see people and they encourage people, and that is interesting. Yeah, amazing. Like, when we were talking, I'm like, it sounds like you had like 9 lives. You had one dream, and then you had another dream. Tell us about your current dream and kind of like your transition out of the service into what you're doing now.
So I came in as a weather person. I became a scientist. I had wonderful jobs, but along the way, I also became a military diplomat. And
diplomat too.
And within that context, in my last 3 years of my career, as I was mentioning, I became the chief of this new program. I was the first implementer for Latin America and the Caribbean for women, peace, and security. So that was wonderful to do that job with it. It was probably one of the hardest jobs, but one of the most passionate I had, because I relate as a woman, as a wife. So this, unlike my other jobs, it was more personal. To make sure that I got this right. And we had a chance to really engage with other countries and elevate the status of women, make the invisible visible, help them to continue, because there's so many women breaking barriers. And to end this, we haven't gotten there yet, but to really end like the first woman does, we want to see the 100th, we want to see the thousands, so that was the last job that I had. That was wonderful to give the value that 50%, generally speaking, of the world's population are women. So there's a lot of talent for the private sector. There's a lot of talent for government. There's a lot of talent for the military. So that was what I did. And then to your question, is transitioning now is continuing with that message that, women, we have a lot of talent, that being able to perform has a lot less to do with gender. It has a lot more to do with mindset, with preparation, with, passion to give. And in this transition now, I work with think tanks that focus on those issues related to women, like Women in International Security is a think tank in Washington, D.C. I am an advisor, a senior fellow for the Gordon Institute for Public Policy. So we're making strides in bringing this, to the forefront of policymakers.
What is Gordon Institute, for those who don't know?
Okay, thank you. So it's a think tank at the Florida International University that focuses on national policy. In a lot of this is in defense and security, but we talk about cyber, intelligence, professionalization of the forces. And now is what I'm starting to work with them and implement is a Women, Peace, and Security Forum to talk about the various perspectives of women in this defense security contexts, which include humanitarian, and also environmental and human disasters. So how do women fit, and what are our roles as defenders and providers, as humanitarians, as victims? Because we know that unfortunately in those chaotic situations, women and children, we are 70% of the victims, but we are also defenders and protectors. We're also policymakers. We're also private citizens doing good. We are also perpetrators. We can also be bad. So it's looking at all these dynamics and saying, okay, we need to look at this big, wicked global problems with gender lenses. That's what we do.
So what's your current North Star? Like where is your vision? What is the thing that you're bringing from the idea and vision world to this physical world at the moment?
So for 25 years, I was a practitioner. As I retired, now I'm diving into academics, and I am in a doctoral program to explore more of women's leaderships, styles, and what works and what doesn't work. I feel that we do have an understanding, although action is still behind, but we do generally have an understanding of women's perspectives as victims. There's so much data out there. The action is behind, but the data is there, and we do that understanding. But I think we also have to balance this notion of women being victims as women being powerful leaders. And that's the focus I want to take. I think talking about the victim piece is very important, but I think to fix those wicked problems, we need more women leaders. And in my academic studies, that's what I'm focusing on, is on women's leadership. And I hope to be able to go from a practitioner to a practitioner, academic practitioner, and continue contributing, like in large scales and small scales too, but in this idea that we have a lot of potential, we have a lot of problems, and we have to connect the dots to find permanent solutions.
I love it. What I love about it is like permanent solutions, but also finding the empowering side. Because I think there's a lot of initiatives in the world trying to like help, save, fix. And I very much resonate with like your perspective is like, no, let's empower. Let's have them step into the state where that problem will no longer exist because they have changed who they are and how they show up in the world, and embrace more of what we do want instead of fighting what we don't want. And recognizing that power is always there.
Yes, I love that, because the power is there, even in the most obscure corners of the world. Even when we look at women that they look completely disenfranchised, they still have a lot of power. And it's power and knowledge. They have, internal knowledge of their communities. They have knowledge that we as outsiders will never know. And sometimes we just keep not suppressing it, but we keep with this narrative that women, we're victims. But I think even in the darkest corners, when women support women, and this is a big one for me too, is, we have to come together as women and help and elevate each other's narrative. Like the competition, it's so, like, it doesn't do any good for anybody. And I have experienced that competition from other women, because the space appears to be limited, appears that, oh, if I am the first woman, I don't want to have a second one. I want to be that. And that doesn't work. That does not work. We really have to come together and collaborate, support, elevate one another, and bring that light forward.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So if you were to have like one message that every single woman on the planet would hear, what would that be?
You're light. Yes, you are light. Women, we are, just men are too, but we have light. We can make change. Never forget that.
So if you'd like to share anything about like your current project and how people can support, participate, share, be part of what you're doing. Please do.
Yes, thank you. Other few fronts I would say is Women in International Security is a wonderful organization that focuses on this complex issues in all fronts of security and defense participation, meaningful participation that I would recommend for people to learn. Also with humanitarian work and supporting organizations that are really doing great and finding this cause if it resonates with you. And there's one in particular when I talk about light. It's called Third Wave Volunteers. The founder is Dr. Allison Thompson. She's a doctor, and I fell in love with her when she said, when everybody is leaving because of the chaos, my team and I are landing. When she said that, I was taken back. I was like, wow. And she does. She's been to Ukraine, Maui. I mean, you find a hot spot and she goes and she does help populations like seniors and children, but not children that, like that too, but not necessarily the children say, okay, children, get in the bus and let's go. She is removing children from chaotic spaces where they have serious health issues that need a oxygen tank, needs to be very carefully transported. That's what she does.
Wow.
And she's the one who shared with me a lot of the light work. She brings light to communities, little lights that bright spaces at night, and do so much for those communities, like in terms of being able to continue efforts at night, protection of women and children. The numbers are staggering. 80% decrease in rape and sexual assault in communities from lights. And this is observed in one of her camps in Haiti.
Wow.
So Third Wave Volunteers is, for women who want to support women. That's an organization that I would recommend. At larger scale, Team Rubicon. It's a veteran-led organization. And of course, the Jack Gordon Institute, because I am very close to the Institute and we're doing policy big scale. So that's what I'd recommend is like get information, get out there and see how you can, or individuals can go from big idea to action, to change.
Yeah. Love it. Ideas to change. And how do people get a hold of you, follow you? Are you on any social media? Do you have a website?
I do. So my webpage is duiturner.com. It's pretty simple. And I am on LinkedIn too, Dui Turner, D-U-I Turner. I am on social media, so I'd love to stay in touch. If anybody has curiosity to learn more about this work or want to be involved, I'd love to, to mediate that for sure.
Beautiful. And I will put the links in the comments so people can easily find you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Coming on the show today was beautiful. I love all the facets of you. I love your perspective that, it's empowering. It's about change. Let's create, let's do it together. Because, I very much resonate with that message. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah. Until next time.